Think and Grow Rich. You've probably heard that title 100 times. It's the second most popular book in the world after the Bible. It has sold tens of millions of copies. It has inspired countless entrepreneurs, dreamers, and seekers of success. And yet, if it's so powerful, if it contains the secret to wealth itself, then why aren't all its readers wealthy? Why do most of them finish the last chapter, feel a brief spark of motivation, and then return to the same life, the same habits, the same level of struggle? The answer isn't that the book doesn't work, it's that most people read it with the wrong eyes. They look for a map to get rich when the book was written as a mirror to make you wise. You see, Napoleon Hill never promised riches to the one who takes. He promised them to the one who becomes. There's a world of difference between those two. The man who reads to take is a beggar with a bookshelf. He's chasing techniques, shortcuts, methods, the next trick to squeeze more out of life. But the man who reads to become is a builder of worlds. He's looking for principles, for transformation, for that shift in mind and spirit that allows abundance to flow through him, not just to him. And that's the part of the book most people skip. Not because it's hidden, but because it's too subtle, too spiritual, too uncomfortable for the mind that only wants results without reflection. When you open Think and Grow Rich, you expect to find formulas for money. What you actually find, if you read it as Hill intended, is a philosophy of value, a system built not on greed but on growth. It whispers the same truth that every great teacher has ever said. You will receive everything you want only after you help enough other people get what they want. That is the rule everyone misses. That is the golden thread that ties together all 13 principles of the book: desire, faith, persistence, specialized knowledge, imagination, and so on. They are not designed to help you take from the world, they are designed to help you become someone worth giving to. The tragedy is that in our age of instant results, people have forgotten that the universe doesn't reward demand, it rewards contribution. Reading Think and Grow Rich with a selfish lens is like planting seeds in concrete. You can water them, you can pray over them, but they'll never grow. Because the soil is wrong. The soil must be gratitude, service, and purpose. Only then does the machinery of abundance begin to move. And yet, here lies the paradox. When you finally stop chasing money, money starts chasing you. When you stop asking, "What can I get?" and start asking, "What can I give?" you align yourself with the same energy that moves mountains, builds industries, and changes lives. That's when the principle of Think and Grow Rich stops being a slogan and starts being a spiritual law. I've met people who could quote Hill's chapters line by line. They knew every principle, every anecdote, but they never understood the essence, that thinking and growing rich isn't about the size of your bank account, it's about the size of your vision. Hill's greatest discovery wasn't that thought creates wealth, it was that thought directed towards service creates lasting wealth. That's the distinction between those who temporarily win and those who permanently prosper. So the next time you hear someone say Think and Grow Rich, don't imagine a man stacking gold in his basement. Imagine a person discovering who he must become to give something of irreplaceable value to the world. Because that's what Hill was truly after, not the mechanics of money, but the mechanics of meaning. The book isn't about thinking your way to wealth, it's about thinking your way to worth. That's the doorway most readers walk past. But for those who pause, open it, and step through, the entire landscape of their life begins to change. The air feels lighter, opportunities begin to appear, people begin to respond differently. Because the world, my friend, doesn't pay you for what you want, it pays you for what you give. And Think and Grow Rich is simply the oldest, most poetic way of saying exactly that. Most people approach Think and Grow Rich the same way they approach success itself, like consumers, not creators. They come to it with a shopping list of desires, a bigger home, a higher income, more influence, more comfort. They read every page scanning for a formula, hoping that somewhere between the words faith and persistence lies a secret shortcut to fortune. But what they miss is that Napoleon Hill wasn't teaching the mechanics of acquisition. He was revealing the psychology of transformation. His message wasn't, here's how to get what you want, but rather, here's how to become the kind of person for whom success is inevitable. That distinction is everything. The average reader sees the book as a manual for taking, how to pull more from life, how to extract value, how to manifest wealth. But Hill, if you read him carefully, was teaching something entirely opposite. He was teaching how to create more value than you consume, how to think in a way that magnetizes opportunity through contribution, not competition. That's why so many people read the book and remain poor in both wallet and spirit, because they're trying to take a philosophy of giving and turn it into a tactic for getting. They treat it like a vending machine. Insert belief, press the right buttons, and out comes $1 million. But the universe doesn't operate that way. It doesn't pay invoices to those who demand. It rewards those who serve. Napoleon Hill spent over 20 years studying 500 of the most successful people in history. Think about that. 2 decades dedicated not to chasing money himself, but to understanding what made others truly great. And what he found wasn't greed or cunning or luck. He found vision. He found service. He found an almost sacred relationship between a person's contribution to humanity and the rewards that followed. Each of those men and women built empires, yes, but not from the hunger to take. They built from the hunger to build. That's a difference of spirit, and spirit is where true riches begin. When you read Think and Grow Rich as a get-rich-quick playbook, you are like someone who stares at a tree and wonders why the fruit isn't growing faster, all while ignoring the roots. Hill's work was about cultivating those roots: character, discipline, clarity of purpose. You don't grow rich by thinking of riches. You grow rich by thinking like a creator, by thinking about how to make the world around you richer because you exist. Money, in that sense, is not a cause. It's applause. It's how the world says thank you for the value you've produced. But here's the hard part, the part most people never want to hear. You cannot cheat this law. You cannot think selfishly and expect selfless rewards. You cannot read Think and Grow Rich with greed in your heart and expect grace in your results. The very vibration of your intention determines the shape of your outcome. And when your intention is narrow, I want more money, I want more fame, I want more ease, the outcome will always be shallow and temporary. Because money without meaning is just paper, and success without service is just noise. Most people approach Think and Grow Rich the same way they approach success itself, like consumers, not creators. They come to it with a shopping list of desires: a bigger home, a higher income, more influence, more comfort. They read every page scanning for a formula, hoping that somewhere between the words faith and persistence lies a secret shortcut to fortune. But what they miss is that Napoleon Hill wasn't teaching the mechanics of acquisition. He was revealing the psychology of transformation. His message wasn't, here's how to get what you want, but rather, here's how to become the kind of person for whom success is inevitable. That distinction is everything. The average reader sees the book as a manual for taking, how to pull more from life, how to extract value, how to manifest wealth. But Hill, if you read him carefully, was teaching something entirely opposite. He was teaching how to create more value than you consume, how to think in a way that magnetizes opportunity through contribution, not competition. That's why so many people read the book and remain poor in both wallet and spirit, because they're trying to take a philosophy of giving and turn it into a tactic for getting. They treat it like a vending machine. Insert belief, press the right buttons, and out comes $1 million. But the universe doesn't operate that way. It doesn't pay invoices to those who demand. It rewards those who serve. Napoleon Hill spent over 20 years studying 500 of the most successful people in history. Think about that. 2 decades dedicated not to chasing money himself, but to understanding what others truly great. And what he found wasn't greed or cunning or luck. He found vision. He found service. He found an almost sacred relationship between a person's contribution to humanity and the rewards that followed. Each of those men and women built empires, yes, but not from the hunger to take. They built from the hunger to build. That's a difference of spirit, and spirit is where true riches begin. When you read Think and Grow Rich as a get-rich-quick playbook, you are like someone who stares at a tree and wonders why the fruit isn't growing faster, all while ignoring the roots. Hill's work was about cultivating those roots: character, discipline, clarity of purpose. You don't grow rich by thinking of riches. You grow rich by thinking like a creator, by thinking about how to make the world around you richer because you exist. Money, in that sense, is not a cause. It's applause. It's how the world says thank you for the value you've produced. But here's the hard part, the part most people never want to hear. You cannot cheat this law. You cannot think selfishly and expect selfless rewards. You cannot read Think and Grow Rich with greed in your heart and expect grace in your results. The very vibration of your intention determines the shape of your outcome. And when your intention is narrow, I want more money, I want more fame, I want more ease, the outcome will always be shallow and temporary. Because money without meaning is just paper, and success without service is just noise. Hill was not offering us a map to take more from others. He was inviting us to rise into the kind of person others want to reward. To stop asking, how can I win? And start asking, how can I contribute? To realize that you can't outsmart the universe, but you can cooperate with it. And that cooperation begins the moment your motive changes from greed to growth, from consumption to contribution, from taking to giving. That's why people read Think and Grow Rich and stay broke. Not because the book fails, but because they fail to see its soul. They extract the tactics, but ignore the transformation. They memorize the words, but miss the wisdom. They want to take the fruit, but they refuse to plant the seed. And until that changes, no amount of positive thinking will rewrite the results. The truth is simple, but not easy. You do not think and then grow rich. You grow into someone rich in thought, and only then does wealth follow. When you start there, when you start with the mindset of a giver, every principle in that book unfolds differently. Desire becomes service. Faith becomes gratitude. Persistence becomes generosity. And the riches, they come quietly, steadily, as the natural consequence of a life that gives more than it takes. Napoleon Hill built his entire philosophy around one idea he called the definite chief aim. It sounds simple. Have a clear goal. Know exactly what you want. But beneath those words lies a spiritual law that most readers never grasp. They make the mistake of turning the chief aim into a number, a possession, or a prize. They say, my goal is to make $1 million, or I want to own a big house, or I want to retire early. And yet these are not aims, they are outcomes. Hill's message was never to obsess over results. It was to design a purpose so strong that results couldn't help but follow. When Hill studied the great builders, the inventors, the visionaries, people like Ford, Edison, Carnegie, and Rockefeller, he noticed that none of them began with money as their aim. Money was always secondary, always downstream from something far greater. They each had a mission that reached beyond themselves, beyond comfort, beyond accumulation. They didn't chase profit, they chased impact. The chief aim wasn't about what they could get from the world, it was about what they could give to the world. This is where the misunderstanding of the modern reader becomes fatal. The ego loves the idea of a definite goal because it can measure it, compare it, boast about it. I'll have 1,000,000 by 30, it says. But the spirit, the part of you that Hill was really speaking to, knows that the truest aim cannot be counted. It can only be felt. It's the vision that gets you out of bed long after motivation fades. It's the service that fuels you when no one's watching. It's the inner voice that whispers, "This is bigger than me." The definite chief aim isn't just a goal, it's a covenant, a promise between you and the universe that you will use your gifts to make something better, that you will commit not merely to succeed, but to serve. And that's why Hill emphasized clarity, not just clarity of desire, but clarity of purpose. You can't fool the universe with vague wishes or selfish aims. You must decide exactly who you will become and what value you will bring. When that decision is made with sincerity, life rearranges itself in your favor. Most people never experience that rearrangement because their aim is too small. They treat wealth like a game of personal advancement instead of a vehicle for contribution. But a selfish goal collapses under its own weight. A selfless goal expands forever. Hill's giants understood this intuitively. They had ambitions larger than their lifetimes. Ford's goal wasn't to sell cars, it was to democratize transportation. Edison didn't dream of profit, he dreamed of illuminating the world. Carnegie didn't just want to stack steel, he wanted to build the backbone of a nation. Their aims pulled them forward because they were powered by purpose, not greed. And that's what Hill meant by definiteness, not stubborn obsession, but alignment. When your aim aligns with service, it becomes magnetic. It draws people, ideas, and opportunities towards you like iron to a magnet. Your purpose becomes the center of gravity around which your entire life begins to orbit. That's why Hill said that definiteness of purpose is the starting point of all achievement. Not because clarity itself makes you rich, but because clarity purifies your motives. It strips away distraction. It forces you to decide, am I doing this to serve myself or to serve something greater? When you answer that question truthfully, the path begins to open. You no longer chase money, you attract it. You no longer chase success, you express it. Your chief aim ceases to be a goal written on paper. It becomes a principle written into your character. And wealth, influence, and peace of mind flow naturally from that place because they're drawn to people who know exactly why they're here and whom they're here to help. That's what Hill really meant by thinking and growing rich. It's not mental magic, it's moral clarity. It's realizing that the purpose of thought isn't to manipulate reality, but to align with it. When you know your aim, not the dollar figure, but the difference you want to make, you've already stepped into the rare air where true success lives. Because wealth doesn't start in the market, it starts in the mind, and more precisely, in a mind devoted to meaning. And here's where so many people fall into the quiet trap, the illusion that naming money as their goal somehow makes them focused. They say, I'm just being practical, or I need to be specific. But there's a vast difference between being specific and being small. When your definite chief aim becomes earn $1,000,000, you've already limited yourself. You've placed a ceiling over your own potential. You've made money the master instead of the measurement. Hill warned us about this subtle mistake because money by itself carries no energy, no vision, no pulse. It is neutral, like a mirror that reflects the intent of whoever holds it. When your intent is narrow, the reflection is dull. When your intent is noble, the reflection shines. The problem with making money the goal is that it disconnects you from meaning. It turns the journey of creation into a transaction. It makes every choice a calculation, every effort a negotiation. You start to measure days not by growth, but by gain. And soon you become trapped in the same pattern that enslaves millions, chasing dollars while feeling spiritually bankrupt. The irony is that when money is your only aim, you eventually lose both the money and the meaning, because money cannot follow someone who has no direction beyond themselves. It's like trying to catch the wind with your hands. The tighter you grip, the faster it escapes. Napoleon Hill didn't study greedy men who happened to win. He studied men whose vision was so magnetic that wealth couldn't help but gather around them. That's why when he spoke of riches, he always included more than just financial wealth. He spoke of harmony in relationships, peace of mind, spiritual awareness, the ability to create and contribute. The people who achieved those things didn't chase cash, they chased clarity. They were driven by a sense of mission so powerful that money appeared as a side effect of momentum.
If you doubt this, think of the names that live on long after their fortunes have faded. The entrepreneurs who built industries, the inventors who changed how humanity lives, none of them started with a lust for currency. They started with an obsession for service. Ford wanted to build a car for the common man, not the elite. Edison wanted to make light affordable, not profitable. These weren't financial goals, they were human goals. But because they carried humanity in their hearts, the world rewarded them with riches that mirrored their impact. And that's the secret most people overlook. The universe is not impressed by greed. It's moved by generosity. Money is a river. It flows toward value. If your goal is only to take, you build a dam. The water stops. But when your goal is to give, to solve problems, to make something better, you become the current itself. You stop worrying about where the river goes, because you are the river. That's what Hill meant when he said the riches of life respond to thought, not the thought of getting, but the thought of becoming useful. So when you declare your goal, don't say, I want to earn $1 million. Say, I want to create something that's worth $1 million. In the lives I touch, the problems I solve, the value I deliver. Because if you create something the world truly needs, the $1 million becomes inevitable. It becomes a measurement, not a mission. It's the applause for the performance, not the purpose of the play. The truth is, people who chase money always burn out. People who chase meaning never stop. The fire that comes from self-interest flickers. The fire that comes from service endures. That's why Hill insisted that your chief aim must be tied to something outside yourself. Because the moment your dream includes others, it stops being fragile. It gains momentum from the energy of those you serve. It becomes too big to die, too purposeful to fade. If you truly wish to think and grow rich, then stop asking how much you can make and start asking how deeply you can matter. Let that be your aim. To create something so valuable that the world has no choice but to reward you. The money will come, it always does. But it will come as a consequence of your contribution, not the cause of it. And that difference, that tiny, invisible shift in motive, is what separates the people who talk about Hill's book from the ones who live it. Look back at the people Napoleon Hill studied, the titans whose names became synonymous with progress. Their stories revealed the deeper pattern that runs through every enduring success. Henry Ford didn't just want to sell automobiles, he wanted to put the world on wheels. Thomas Edison didn't dream of selling light bulbs, he dreamed of illuminating the planet. Andrew Carnegie didn't set out to stack piles of steel, he set out to build the infrastructure of a nation. These men understood something that few ever grasp, that wealth is a byproduct of usefulness. It's not the goal. It's the echo. When Ford imagined a car for the common man, he was ridiculed. The experts told him that manufacturing a vehicle cheap enough for the average worker was impossible. But Ford wasn't thinking about profit margins, he was thinking about people. He saw a future where every family could travel freely, where distance no longer dictated destiny. His vision was democratic, his purpose was service. And because of that, his innovations, the assembly line, mass production, fair wages, revolutionized not just an industry, but an entire way of life. The fortune that followed wasn't accidental. It was the applause of society saying, "Thank you for changing how we live." Edison's story is much the same. The man failed thousands of times in pursuit of the electric light, but failure never discouraged him because he wasn't chasing a paycheck. He was chasing possibility. He believed that every home, every street, every workshop deserved to escape the darkness. His goal wasn't comfort, it was contribution. And once the world finally lit up with his invention, his wealth became a natural reflection of his impact. People weren't buying bulbs, they were buying light. That's what Napoleon Hill saw so clearly when he wrote his masterpiece. The greatest fortunes in history are built not by those who seek wealth, but by those who seek to serve at scale. The pattern is universal. Service first, then success. Contribution first, then compensation. Give the world something it didn't have before: safety, freedom, beauty, efficiency, understanding, and the world will reward you beyond measure. But notice something profound. The moment these men achieved their wealth, they didn't stop creating. Because the satisfaction never came from the money, it came from the mission. Once you taste that kind of purpose, ordinary goals feel empty. You start to see that the true currency of life isn't money at all. It's impact. How many lives have you touched? How many problems have you solved? How many hearts have you lifted? That's the real scorecard. This is why the greats live on long after their fortunes have dissolved. You don't remember Ford because he was rich. You remember him because he changed how you move. You don't remember Edison because he was wealthy. You remember him because he gave you light. Wealth fades. Impact endures. So when you look at your own ambitions, ask yourself, is my goal to accumulate or to illuminate? Because the universe doesn't celebrate accumulation. It celebrates expansion. It celebrates the courage to share your ideas, your gifts, your strength. Every great fortune starts with someone asking not, "How can I take more?" but "How can I give more?" And that's what separates the average dreamer from the enduring creator. The dreamer wants applause. The creator wants to deserve it. The dreamer measures life by what he earns. The creator measures life by what he builds. The dreamer chases wealth as a reward. The creator sees it as a responsibility. And that shift from wanting money to wanting meaning is what turns ordinary ambition into greatness. So if you ever wonder why Ford, Edison, or Carnegie became immortal in Hill's research, it's because they embodied the rule everyone else missed. They didn't chase money, they chased mastery. They didn't seek to be rich, they sought to be useful. And as Hill discovered after studying them all, usefulness is the highest form of intelligence. When your life becomes an answer to the needs of others, riches, both visible and invisible, start flowing to you in ways no formula can explain. There is a rhythm to life, a law as constant as gravity that governs everything we do, the law of giving and receiving. Napoleon Hill understood it, though he rarely used those exact words. He called it the law of compensation. And it's hidden beneath every page of Think and Grow Rich. It says simply, you cannot harvest before you plant, and you cannot receive more than you've earned through service. The universe always pays its debts, but it only pays in proportion to the value you've delivered. This isn't punishment, it's precision. It's how balance sustains itself across time.
Most people want to be rewarded before they've given anything. They want the applause before the performance, the promotion before the contribution, the fruit before the roots. And when life doesn't cooperate, they call it unfair. But the truth is brutally fair. Life mirrors your level of value. You can't demand abundance with the hands of a taker. You must open them, not to grab, but to give. The law of giving and receiving is the heartbeat of every success story Hill ever studied. He noticed that those who built true wealth were never in a hurry to be paid. They trusted the timing of value. They invested themselves, their time, energy, imagination, knowing that the returns might come later, from different directions, sometimes from strangers they'd never meet. They understood that contribution compounds like interest. Every act of service, every honest effort, every seed of help multiplies in unseen ways. You might not see the harvest tomorrow, but it's growing quietly beneath the soil of time. When you begin to see the world through that lens, everything changes. Work is no longer something you do for money, it becomes something you do with meaning. You stop asking, when will I be paid for this, and start asking, how much value can I add here? Because value, once created, can't disappear. It travels. It finds you again through unexpected channels. A new client, a new friend, a new opportunity. Hill called it the invisible return. What you give circulates through the world and eventually finds its way back. Sometimes multiplied, sometimes transformed, but always returned. That's why stinginess never leads to greatness. A closed hand might hold what it has, but it can't receive anything new. Generosity, on the other hand, keeps the flow alive. It's the movement of energy, ideas, effort, goodwill that makes wealth possible. You can hoard money, but you can't hoard value. Value must circulate. When you give it freely, you become a channel for abundance rather than a container of scarcity. Think of the soil. It doesn't complain when it gives away its nutrients. It knows the cycle. Give today, grow tomorrow. And so it is with people. The richest individuals are not the ones who have taken the most, but those who have given the most, consistently, creatively, and consciously. They give effort when no one is watching, quality when no one demands it, kindness when no one expects it. That invisible extra is what separates the average from the exceptional. So when Hill wrote that the starting point of all achievement is desire, he didn't mean the desire to own. He meant the desire to contribute, the hunger to add something to life that wasn't there before. That's what sets the great ones apart. Their joy comes not from counting what they've earned, but from witnessing what they've caused. Money to them is not the purpose, it's the proof. The proof that their ideas solved real problems, that their service mattered, that their time here made a difference. You see, wealth isn't a reward, it's a reflection. It's life saying, you gave enough value to enough people for long enough, here's the evidence. And the beauty of that truth is that it places control back in your hands. You can't control when the harvest comes, but you can control how much you plant. You can't predict how the reward will appear, but you can decide how deeply you serve. So if you ever feel that success is slow to arrive, look not at what life is withholding, but at what you might still be holding back. Because the moment you give fully, without calculation, without delay, the law of giving and receiving awakens. And when it does, the rewards don't just meet your expectations, they exceed them, always. Napoleon Hill called it going the extra mile. It sounds like a pleasant suggestion, a motivational phrase. But in truth, it's one of the most profound laws of success ever discovered. To go the extra mile means to give more value than you are paid for, to serve beyond expectation, to sow in excess of what seems fair. Hill observed that the most prosperous people in history all shared this one trait. They consistently gave more than required, not once, not occasionally, but as a way of life. It wasn't about heroism or charity. It was about understanding how the world actually works. Because the universe has no choice to reward surplus energy. Whatever you give beyond what's expected creates a vacuum, and nature always fills a vacuum. Most people stop at good enough. They meet the minimum, deliver the average, do just enough to get by. They punch in, punch out, and then wonder why their lives feel like repetition. But the moment you choose to exceed the minimum, something inside you shifts. You move from being a worker to being a creator. You begin to see opportunity where others see obligation. You stop waiting for recognition and start producing it. Hill said, "Render more service than that for which you are paid, and you will soon be paid for more than you render." It's not magic, it's mechanics. This principle works perfectly with the law of compensation. Every time you give more than expected, you expand the invisible ledger of value in your favor. You've increased your worth, not on paper, but in perception, reputation, and energy. People feel it, employers feel it, the market feels it. The world naturally gravitates toward those who give freely, because trust is built on that kind of reliability. The one who goes the extra mile never struggles to find opportunity, because opportunity is always searching for him. Think about it. Every product you love, every brand you admire, every person you respect, they all share this same spirit. They didn't just do what was required. They delivered excellence. They surprised you with care, with quality, with thoughtfulness. They invested more of themselves than they had to, and as a result, they stood out. That's what Hill was pointing toward. Success is never crowded along the extra mile because so few people travel it.
The beautiful irony is that you can't fake it. You can't pretend to give more while secretly keeping score. The energy of genuine contribution is felt instantly, while manipulation always leaks through. Going the extra mile must be sincere, not because it impresses others, but because it improves you. It stretches your character, sharpens your discipline, and transforms your self-image. Each act of surplus effort rewires your identity from that of a taker to that of a giver, from an employee to an entrepreneur of value. You stop trading hours for money and start trading ideas for impact. Hill knew that this law has a compounding effect. The first time you go beyond expectation, maybe no one notices. The second time, maybe still nothing. But keep going, and one day you'll cross a threshold where the world can no longer ignore you. Your reputation becomes your resume. Your consistency becomes your calling card, and opportunities begin to chase you, not because of luck, but because of the cumulative gravity of all those extra miles you've walked. There's a quiet dignity in this way of living. You're no longer bargaining with life, trying to get something for nothing. You're entering into partnership with it. You're saying, "I'll give more first. I'll move before I'm moved. I'll trust the law of cause and effect." And life responds every single time, though not always immediately. The delay is just incubation, the universe aligning events to return your value multiplied. So if you want to separate yourself in any field, forget competition, just commit to contribution. Deliver more value, more care, more excellence than anyone expects. Leave every room a little better than you found it. Do this, and soon you'll notice a subtle but powerful reversal. Instead of you chasing success, success begins to chase you, because the world can't resist the pull of someone who always walks the extra mile. One of the most liberating truths Napoleon Hill ever hinted at, though few grasp it, is that you never really work for a company, or for a boss, or even for money. You work for a principle. You work for the law of cause and effect. You work for the universe itself. When you understand that, every task, no matter how small, becomes sacred. The mediocre mind says, "Why should I give my best when this job barely pays me?" The wise mind replies, "Because I'm not working for the pay, I'm working on myself." Hill knew that this shift in consciousness was the beginning of greatness. When you stop laboring out of obligation and start contributing out of purpose, you align yourself with the same rhythm that moves worlds. Think about the tragedy of the average worker. He spends decades giving only enough to avoid being fired, and his employer pays him only enough to keep him from quitting. Both live trapped in a quiet negotiation of mediocrity. But the person who sees himself as a steward of value, not a servant of salary, steps beyond that invisible prison. He realizes that every hour is an investment, every task is a test of character, and every act of excellence is a message to the universe saying, "I'm ready for more." The return may not come from your current employer or even your current field, but it will come because the law of compensation doesn't care where you work. It only cares how you work. When you understand this, the whole game changes. You no longer need constant supervision or praise. You stop complaining about unfair treatment or lack of recognition. You begin to recognize that everything you do is part of your personal brand, your invisible reputation in the marketplace of life. You're building equity in yourself, and that equity compounds. The person who consistently delivers more than expected, regardless of circumstance, becomes magnetic. Opportunities start to appear not by coincidence, but by correspondence, life reflecting back the quality of the energy you've been giving. Hill wrote about this in quiet but powerful ways. He said, "Render service wherever you are, because the universe is always watching." That's not mysticism, it's mechanics. The same way gravity doesn't ask your permission to work, the law of cause and effect doesn't care whether you believe in it. It's always measuring, always responding, always balancing the scale of effort and reward. Every time you give beyond expectation, you set a cause in motion, and that cause never dies. It circulates until it finds its way back to you, often multiplied, often disguised as luck. There's a certain serenity that comes from living this way. You stop worrying about fairness because you understand that justice is built into the system. The universe may not pay you weekly, but it pays perfectly, and it keeps immaculate books. The late nights, the unseen effort, the quiet integrity, none of it is wasted. Life records it all and releases the reward when you're ready to handle it. Hill called this the cosmic habit force, the invisible intelligence that ensures no good deed goes unrewarded and no lesson goes unlearned. When you see your work through this lens, the very act of working becomes spiritual practice. You begin to take pride not in titles or transactions, but in transformation, your own. You realize that every job you've ever had was simply a classroom for your character. The point was never the paycheck, it was the person you were becoming through the process. And once that awareness sinks in, no position feels beneath you and no opportunity feels wasted. You know that you are working directly with the laws that govern abundance, and those laws never failed the one who honors them. So stop saying, "I work for this company," or "I work for that man." Those are temporary arrangements. You work for something much larger, the timeless principle that effort multiplied by intention equals destiny. And when you understand that you're not in a job, but in a journey of expansion, everything changes. The resentment fades, the boredom disappears. Each moment becomes a chance to add value, to practice mastery, to strengthen your integrity. Because when you work for the universe, promotions don't come from managers, they come from momentum. Hill often spoke of the law of increasing returns, but beneath that phrase lived a timeless idea, older than commerce itself, the tithe. Not in the religious sense, though it can be that too, but in the universal sense. Give more than you take, and life will always replenish the balance in your favor. The ancient farmers understood it instinctively. They gave the first and best portion of their harvest back to the soil, to the temple, to the community. Not because they had excess, but because they understood that gratitude must move before abundance can multiply. That same rhythm runs through Think and Grow Rich, an invisible current that Hill described as the principle of overcompensation. To give 10 when only 1 is required, to invest more than you're asked to release value into the world without demanding immediate payment. That's the modern form of tithing, and it's one of the most practical wealth strategies you'll ever learn. People misunderstand tithing because they think it's about charity. It isn't. It's about circulation. When you give without fear, you keep the flow of energy alive. When you hoard, you interrupt that flow, and life stops moving toward you. Hill saw money not as a goal but as a current, and a current must move to stay alive. Every time you share your knowledge, every time you help someone without expecting a return, every time you deliver more quality than you're paid for, you're tithing into the invisible economy of the universe. And that economy never defaults on its debts. Look closely at the most successful people you know. They're all givers in disguise. They give ideas, mentorship, generosity, encouragement. They open doors, they make introductions, they solve problems that don't even belong to them. And because they live in the spirit of abundance, abundance keeps finding them. Their giving isn't a tactic, it's an identity. They don't give because they have because they give. That's the sequence most people get wrong. The world teaches, when I have more, I'll give. The universe whispers, when you give more, you'll have.
Tithing, in this modern sense, doesn't have to mean donating money. It means contributing value. It's giving your attention fully when others are distracted. It's offering your skill where it can elevate someone else's path. It's mentoring without charge, teaching without ego, helping without headlines. Every act of service builds unseen capital, moral, emotional, relational capital, and eventually those invisible assets begin to crystallize into visible rewards. The client who suddenly appears, the opportunity that seems too lucky to be random, the promotion you didn't ask for. These are simply the dividends of your past generosity maturing in divine timing. The cynical mind scoffs at this idea, calling it naive or mystical. But think of how markets work. Value attracts value. Trust attracts trust. Reputation attracts reward. It's not mysticism, it's mathematics. If your entire life becomes an engine of contribution, then mathematically the world must return it in some form. The form may change, maybe not in cash, maybe in connection, inspiration, health, or peace. But the balance sheet of the universe always evens out. You cannot outgive life. And here's the beauty. The more you give, the less you worry. Because giving moves you from scarcity into sufficiency. It dissolves fear. You realize that your supply was never limited. It was only locked, waiting for you to turn the key of generosity. When you hold tightly, you live as though resources are finite. But when you release, you experience what Hill meant when he said, "Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve." Because conception requires faith, and faith is proven through giving. So start treating every act of service, every moment of excellence, every unseen effort as a tithe into the invisible treasury of life. Give not as payment, but as participation in the greater flow. The irony is, the more you release, the richer you become, not just in possessions, but in peace. And that's when you understand what Hill and every wise teacher meant all along. Wealth isn't what you hold, it's what you circulate. Most people ask the wrong question. They wake up each morning and say, "How can I make more money?" as if money were the source, not the symptom. That's the very mindset that keeps them chasing it. Napoleon Hill tried to turn that question inside out. He wanted people to ask instead, "How can I become more valuable?" Because money, in truth, is nothing but a mirror. It reflects back the value you've contributed to others. The market doesn't care about your need, it responds to your usefulness. When you stop chasing income and start cultivating value, you realign yourself with the natural law of abundance. To ask, "How can I make more money?" is to assume you lack something. It's a question born from deficiency. But to ask, "How can I give more value?" is to acknowledge that you already are the source. That single shift in language changes everything: your posture, your energy, your creativity. One question leads you to anxiety, the other to inspiration. Hill called this the difference between the poverty consciousness and the riches consciousness. Poverty consciousness is obsessed with what's missing. Riches consciousness is obsessed with what's possible. One looks for shortcuts, the other looks for service. When you make value your focus, ideas start appearing because your mind has changed from extraction to expansion. You begin to notice problems that others ignore, opportunities that others overlook. You stop asking, "Where can I find money?" and start asking, "Where can I solve pain?" Because every fortune begins as a solution to someone's frustration. Every empire starts as an act of service. When you think that way, you no longer wait for permission to act. You become a creator in motion. The world starts opening its doors because you're no longer trying to take, you're offering to build. Let's put this into practical perspective. Imagine two people doing the same job. One focuses on the paycheck, the other on the purpose. The first says, "I'll do what's required." The second says, "How can I make this better?" Within a year, the second person has learned twice as much, built twice as many relationships, and created twice as much value. Who do you think life will reward? The universe is exact in its arithmetic. It multiplies the one who multiplies others. And here's something most people miss. When you become more valuable, you don't have to demand higher income. It starts seeking you. Money begins to flow in your direction because value is magnetic. You can't hide excellence any more than you can hide light. Someone, somewhere, will see it and want to be near it. Hill described this beautifully. Your only real security is the value you create in yourself. Not your job title, not your savings account, not even your network. You. When you are valuable, you are unshakable. You carry your fortune inside. This question, "How can I add more value?" is the great equalizer. It erases excuses. It doesn't matter where you start, how much capital you have, or who you know. Anyone can become valuable. Anyone can study a problem, learn a skill, offer more, serve better. Every time you do, you shift the ratio between what you give and what you receive. Eventually, the balance tilts so heavily in your favor that reward becomes inevitable. That's what Hill meant when he wrote that riches come as the result of definite effort applied toward definite purpose. And remember, value isn't just professional, it's personal. It's how you show up in relationships, how you listen, how you contribute to the energy of every room you enter. People who make others feel seen, heard, and inspired are always wealthy in the currency that matters most, trust. And trust, in time, becomes opportunity. So stop obsessing over how to earn more and start asking how to become more useful, more skilled, more generous, more consistent. Because when you grow, your income follows you. When you elevate others, life elevates you. And that's the hidden promise of Think and Grow Rich, that money isn't the goal. It's the echo of the value you've given to the world. True wealth, as Hill discovered after decades of study, is never something you chase. It's something you attract by who you become. Money is not a miracle. It's a measurement. It measures the value you've delivered, the trust you've earned, the problems you've solved. But the essence of Think and Grow Rich goes far deeper than that. Hill was teaching that every form of abundance, financial, emotional, spiritual, is a reflection of your internal state. You don't become rich to feel fulfilled. You become fulfilled, and that energy magnetizes richness in every form. When people talk about the secret of Hill's philosophy, they often repeat the phrase, "Thoughts become things." But that's only half the truth. Thoughts aligned with purpose become things. Thoughts alone are powerless. The universe doesn't reward idle wishes. It responds to organized value, disciplined imagination, persistent faith. Hill's 500 subjects didn't daydream their way to fortune. They disciplined their minds to serve a definite purpose. They visualized not money, but meaningful outcomes, products, inventions, systems, and services that improved life for others. That's why their wealth endured. It was built on contribution, not consumption. There's a story Hill once told about a salesman who kept failing to meet his quotas. The man was desperate, constantly praying for more sales. Hill advised him to stop asking for customers and start asking for ways to serve his customers better. Within months, his numbers exploded, not because the economy changed, but because he changed. He stopped thinking like a taker and started thinking like a giver. His energy shifted from scarcity to sufficiency, and people could feel it. That's how wealth actually works. The outer world mirrors the vibration of your inner world.
And here's the profound irony. When you no longer need money to feel whole, it starts showing up faster than ever. Why? Because need repels and contribution attracts. When you act from need, you're signaling lack. When you act from generosity, you're signaling strength. The universe, like a perfect marketplace, always trades energy for energy. What you give without fear, you receive without limit. Hill understood this, which is why his richest subjects were often his most humble. They weren't chasing applause, they were chasing excellence. They didn't see wealth as a goal, but as a natural consequence of mastery. Every great builder in Hill's research had one thing in common. They served something larger than themselves. A man whose ambition ends with his own comfort will always struggle to sustain it. But a man whose ambition includes others can't help but prosper. Why? Because when your purpose benefits many, many begin to benefit you. Service creates a network of goodwill that no amount of marketing can replicate. It becomes your unseen safety net. People vouch for you, trust you, open doors for you, and before long, opportunity flows to you like a tide returning to its source. And the beauty of this principle is that it removes the pressure. You don't have to manipulate, chase, or compete. You simply have to create value and give it room to circulate. Hill's wealthiest subjects lived in a constant state of gratitude. They saw money not as a possession, but as permission. Permission to do more good, to employ others, to expand their impact. To them, success was stewardship. They understood that the universe never entrusts great wealth to small minds. It gives it to those who have proven they'll use it to multiply good. So if you truly want to grow rich, not just financially, but in spirit and joy, stop thinking about what's missing and start amplifying what's meaningful. Fill your work with intention, your days with discipline, and your interactions with kindness. Hill wasn't teaching us how to earn riches, he was teaching us how to deserve them. Because when your thoughts, actions, and motives align around giving more than you take, wealth stops being something you pursue, it becomes something you simply can't avoid. Every timeless idea in Think and Grow Rich leads back to one truth. You receive only after you give. Every law Hill wrote about, desire, faith, persistence, organized planning, is simply a different doorway to the same room. That room is called service. The person who learns to serve abundantly can never stay poor, because life itself conspires to support the one who supports others. The man who becomes obsessed with adding value becomes impossible to ignore. Hill said, "You can't keep a good man down." And what he meant is that you can't suppress a giver. The more he's pressed, the more he produces. The more he loses, the more he learns. Eventually, the universe must balance the scales, and it does so with interest. That's the real reason Think and Grow Rich remains powerful nearly a century later. It's not a book about money. It's a book about becoming someone money trusts. It's about understanding that wealth follows wisdom, and wisdom follows work. You can read every financial strategy in the world, but until you learn to serve people sincerely, consistently, creatively, your results will always fall short of your potential. But once you shift your aim from income to impact, life begins to rearrange itself around your purpose. Opportunities emerge, the right people appear, ideas start arriving as if whispered from a higher place. And suddenly, success stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like a rhythm, because you're finally moving in harmony with the law of life itself. So here's the challenge, my friend. Stop asking, how can I get ahead? Start asking, who can I help today? Instead of counting profits, count the number of people who are better off because you showed up. Instead of trying to predict your next raise, raise your level of contribution.
Let your business, your art, your service, your leadership become an act of gratitude. Because the greatest wealth you'll ever know doesn't sit in a bank. It lives in the trust, loyalty, and love of the people you've served. This is the hidden rule everyone misses in Think and Grow Rich: that giving is the seed of all getting, that generosity is the engine of growth, and that service is not a side path to success, it is success. If you live by that rule, wealth will stop being something you chase. It will start being something you carry in your habits, your mindset, your spirit. And before you go, let's keep this conversation alive. If this message spoke to you, if it reminded you of what truly builds wealth, both in life and in business, do me a small favor that means the world. Subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new insight. Then, drop a comment below. Tell me one way you plan to give more value starting today. Remember, sharing your intention is the first act of giving. And who knows, your words might just inspire someone else to begin their own journey towards true, lasting wealth.